You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Craig, and yes, his last name is Beers.
How you doing, Rob?
Hey, Craig, so tell me a little bit about yourself and if you want what you do professionally.
All right. Well, I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania with my wife of 10 years almost. We have a 27-year-old daughter who lives in New Jersey. He's a school teacher. I'm in the printing industry. So I was a pre-press supervisor for many years. I'm now in sales, but still in the printing industry. Work for a local company in Eastern Pennsylvania. Doing it almost, I'd have to think 36, 37 years.
We say like printing as in newspapers.
Actually more packaging and labels. So anything you buy in the store that comes in like a folding carton is
Mm.
what we do, or any label that's on any type of everything. We print labels. Millions and millions of labels we print.
How did you decide to at least get into that? This obviously wasn't a choice or wasn't something you wanted to do as a kid. I don't picture a kid wanting to make labels unless you have a label maker for Christmas.
Well, my first 30 years was actually in pre-press. So back in the early 80s, got out of high school, didn't have any interest in college, and just started working at a company making deliveries for them as a 19-year-old kid with no idea what he wanted to do. From there, I kind of started working in the company itself. And what pre-press was, is takes like, so you have your artist or your designer, and then you have the printing company. We were pre-press, so we were in between that step. So I was at one point was retouching photos and working on some very large cameras um, before a lot of the new technology that you see today. I always tell people I was retouching photos before Photoshop existed. Photoshop is what put me out of my first job, actually.
Yeah, I would have to think the technology, just where we kind of become like I've talked to a few people that print their own newspapers and own their own kind of like newspaper to less journalistic spots, is if that's what you want to call them. But they've been put out of work. It's because of the fact that technology, being a journalist, anybody could be a journalist now because what's on the internet? It's a blog, a certain article. Anybody can literally write anything without any information, out any evidence, and put it out there. And it doesn't matter if it's wrong. Back in the day, like you could see it on Spider-Man 3 or something, when Eddie Brock, he took falsified pictures of Spider-Man. Next thing you know, he loses his job. If you did that as a journalist, you created a false article, you did any of these things, your whole credit was down the drain. You lost everything. But
Oh, exactly.
like nowadays, like you even losing a job at the beginning because of Photoshop. Technology has made our lives pretty easy and it's been a benefit, but it also has taken a lot of stuff. I mean, at one point in our history, there was a thing called a Luddite movement. And this was around the time, like industrial, like I guess the industrial era, where factory workers were getting put out of work because they had new machines coming on the line. So what all these farmers and all these factory workers did, they rose up and broke all these machines, broke every single printing press, everything, because they're afraid they're going to be out of work.
Oh, it's kind of like the John Henry story in a sense, if you think about it. Technology comes along and takes a place. But yeah, I was in the middle 80s and I was doing some training and the guy said, oh, there's a company in California that's going to change everything. And I'm like, whatever, this is, it's not going to happen. And it was Photoshop. And literally, Photoshop came out within a year and a half. I was laid off. It was a family company. The person I trained was the son-in-law. So, of course, I was the first one to go. But it was a great thing in general. Just even though that happened, it still worked out for me in the long run because I went to my next company and I was part of my retouching photos is understanding color, and understanding color is what I did well. So the next company needed somebody who did that, and I was there about a year, and then I went to a company called Daytimers, and I don't know if you're familiar with a Daytimer planner, but they were looking for somebody who understood color for their pre-press department. So literally, I was in the pre-press for 30 years, and then in sales now for about 7.
Which do you enjoy more? Do you like the sales part side of it?
Um, Honestly, it's kind of a mix because I enjoy the production side of things and figuring out and solving problems. but I enjoy the freedom of the sales part.
I would feel like, especially on the production line too, it's got to be a little bit difficult. And the fact is, companies can just hire machines to do the exact same work at a better rate and I guess produce faster, but it's not the same. When you hop into an old school, let's use muscle cars for instance, when you get in
Oh,
there
sure.
and you know that it was made with American hands or it was made with like just an actual person's ingenuity, like it feels different. And, you get into the ones nowadays, they're all practically the same. There's no scuff marks. I mean, even back in the day, they had a plan of how to make a car, but no car back in the day was made exactly the same. They had everything that was supposed to be. The next thing you know, someone slipped up, forgot to screw something in. You have a car that's missing a bolt.
Yeah, actually, you do.
And I think that's the most interesting part too, because like when I always talk about muscle cars and why people are so fascinated with them, why I get so fascinated with them, it's just because it's fucking history on wheels right there. Like that is like you got to look back. Like I don't know if you ever saw the movie Ford versus Ferrari,
I have not yet.
but
No, I do
they
want to see that one.
they were showing the inside of Ford factory, all these guys that were like just adding stuff, painting stuff to a machine, and all these cars were coming down the line like a perfect production line. But it was all hands touching those cars, not machines. Ferrari, they set out maybe a few cars, I guess, every other year or something. Because they spent millions and millions in just the one car. Ford was just tossing them out like crazy. And to see the ingenuity behind things, it really makes you look at a lot of things. Like there was a movie Nightcrawler that came out with the journalistic kind of piece. And it really showed you where the blog has kind of turned into. Technology has been a huge benefit, but it's also really put a lot of people out of work and it's really made people a little bit lazy in a way.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just in the technology of just the phones, the way they've come around, and GPS. Like I said, I'm in sales, so I'm on the road a lot. I honestly don't know directions to a lot of places anymore, just because plug it in my phone and just start following where it's telling me to go.
And even then, back before we had cell phones or GPS, you didn't even need to ask for directions. You just figured it out.
Well, true, true, but you had a better sense of the direction as well.
True, but I never ask for directions, even with like I could easily look it up on my phone. I'm like, I know where to go. I know where to go. I'll figure it out. They said it was by this maple tree. Then you're turning down your radio because you think that's going to help you find the place better.
That's true.
Well, I mean, there's always one thing I guess that we can always count on is that's American made. And when that comes to American made, we're talking about barbecue. No fucking machine can bring up barbecue.
That's true. That's true.
You like that segue?
I do.
So where did the barbecue begin to start, man?
Well, like 3 years ago, I was looking at a new grill. We have a Weber silver gas grill that my wife and I had for 17 years. The handle's been broke for 16 of those years. Replaced all the parts, and we're like, let's get a new, nice gas grill, is what I was originally going for. And I started researching just different grills and charcoal and some of those things. And I came across the Comodo Joe and started seeing what it could do. And I'm like, I can pretty much do everything I want to do, and I can smoke meat and do those things. I can replace all the parts of the gas grill again, and I don't use it that often, so I'll keep that and get the Komodo Joe. It was the same price point, so that's what I went with, and that was about 3 years ago. So ever since I got that, started watching some YouTube at the time to understand it, to learn how to use it, and all those things. And I started thinking, well, YouTube channel would be kind of fun to do something with. Um, and my one buddy, who was actually used to be my wife's boss years ago, is into photography and into filming and video and all those things. And we get together probably once a month. So I just kind of said to him, as kind of a joke and having fun, let's get together and do a YouTube channel. He goes, I see you do all the shooting and editing, and I'll do the cooking, and we'll drink beer. So it's kind of how it all started.
You telling me it didn't start on a George Foreman?
It didn't. Well, actually, I had one many years ago, but it did not start there.
Look, those things were probably in every college kid's dorm when they were popular.
They were great, at the time, a great little tool to do something quick.
And especially when it comes to barbecue too, like what's your most memorable experience cooking something up on a grill? Like for me, I went camping with my dad all the time. So a lot of it was campfire meals. Like, you pull up into a camping spot or something. There's a bonfire pit that has like a little grill top to it, which you never want to put your food directly on because that thing was weathered to hell and probably filled with diseases. But what you would do is you'd put your fire logs in there, get some nice coals going. Then when you flip it over to put the grill side on, you just grab some tin foil, grab a plate or grab something, and then you put it on there. And we would wrap baked potatoes. We would do corn on the cob. So you'd sprinkle a little Old Bay in there, and then wrap it up in the tin foil to soak in all the juices inside. Burgers, hot dogs, you name it, man.
Yeah, it was like I said, I just remember back in the day when my dad would light the charcoal. You'd put the coals in the pan and he'd get the lighter fluid. I actually used gasoline back in the day and just threw a match on it and let it burn for a while and threw it in the grill. And that's kind of what the barbecuing was back then. So it's definitely evolved, and it's definitely something I never used. Charcoal lighter fluid and gas, those type of things. Never for starting a fire in any charcoal pit ever anymore. Just because you don't want that flavor in any of the meat you're doing.
Now, when it comes to, I guess you would say, one of your best cooking experiences, what would it be?
This past year, I did an entire prime rib for the family. At Thanksgiving, we never eat turkey at my parents' house. And for the past, I want to say 30 years or more, we don't do Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving just because I have three brothers, and to get the entire families together, it always works out the Saturday before or Saturday after Thanksgiving. So this past year, we do prime rib, and believe it or not, we do pig stomach on Thanksgiving. So, like I said, grew up on, we only ever had pig stomach on Thanksgiving, and then as wives and kids started coming along in the family, they weren't eating the pig stomach, so we started making prime rib on Thanksgiving as well. So this past year on my Comodo Joe, I did I think it was like a 17-pound prime rib. Finished it, put it in a cooler, drove to my parents, and then sliced it up when I got there, and it was a pretty good time. Everybody enjoyed the meal.
And wait, this was at your parents' house or the in-laws?
It was my parents' house, actually.
I was about to say, you're about to impress some in-laws if you roll up with that thing on there. Be like, hey, guess what? We're eating what I made.
Well, I did the year before. I smoked a turkey for my brother-in-law on my Komodo Joe again, and showed up at his house with a full turkey ready to go.
That's how you get in with the family, dude. You just start loading up with some fresh made barbecue. Like, hey, man, want to try this goat? Try this goat I grilled up on a barbecue out there. See, I'm a little bit different when it comes to my traditions of like holiday food meals. Instead of eating turkey on Thanksgiving, I have like shrimp and crab cakes. I live in a
Okay.
seafood town, Ocean City, Maryland. So, that was always a thing for me. I'm not a very big red meat eater. So when you're posting up your videos of your barbecue and all this stuff, it's giving me indigestion where I literally feel my butthole pucker up.
And I grew up Pennsylvania Dutch, so meat and potatoes was pretty much every meal.
I mean, when did the journey kind of like you figure out that you really wanted to kind of get interested in this? I mean, you're talking about hitting up somebody and saying, "Hey, man, you make videos or something. I cook the meat. Let's just do a YouTube channel." Like, is that what you initially kind of started figuring out that you wanted to do? Like, even with the passion for cooking, like, how'd you stick with it? Because I mean, it's just cooking for some people, but how did you find the niche for it?
It honestly was, I watched T. Roy Cooks was the first channel I watched, and he was just laid back, and I'm pretty laid back when it comes to most things. And my buddy, like I said, does all the video, Jack, because that's how the name came across. So Beers Jack at Barbecue is my last name is Beers, and then Jack is Jack, and then the barbecue part of it. But started watching, like I said, T. Roy, and just seeing things. I honestly never did a brisket or a pork shoulder till about 3 years ago. Was the first time I ever tried it. Watched a video, got one, threw it on there, understood how to grill. I like food. I like to eat, so I like to make things a certain way. And it was the first time I ever tried it. And in the beginning, a bunch of our videos in the beginning was the first time I ever tried some of these different meats, and we put it on video. We don't reshoot things. It's rare we reshoot anything. I always joke with Jack. I say I'm the one take wonder. We do it one time and one time only.
Yeah, well, it's hard to recreate something too. It's like you go all in on the first try, and then you're telling me what it wasn't rolling, so we have to reshoot it. You're like, all right, this isn't some like stage show act. This is the real deal right here.
Oh yeah, because you'll see me mess up or not say something properly or whatever it may be. We'll throw some subtitles in once in a while when I screw up talking, but I want it to be more real. Jack is a electrical engineer, so he likes everything a certain way. So my style drives him a little crazy, but it works between the two of us.
Yeah, I mean, even when you're cooking up barbecue and stuff, like for me, I don't handle red meat very well, but I do enjoy it, man. I'm telling you, you get a nice burger, like a smoky kind of charred burger. I like all my stuff charred. Like if you just dumped gasoline on top of it and basically crisped it up to hell. Like I don't know what it is. It's just amazing that way. A nice hot dog on a barbecue grill or something. It's adds a whole new flavor to the food that you really can't experience, that outside kind of cooking method of it too. I think I've only really barbecued by myself once or twice. And grilling up hot dogs or grilling up a nice burger, grilling up some wings or something. And then the outside camaraderie when you're doing it around people too. I mean, they're perfect for tailgating events. The fun part about it really is honestly surrounding yourself with like people and be able to sit down and have a beer, wait till got to flip the burgers. Next thing you know, you go over and flip the burgers.
Yeah, and excuse me, a group that Jack is part of, like even before I met my wife, a group of them would get together and they called them these MQ parties, and it stood for mass quantity. So they'd have mass quantities of food and alcohol and all those things. And so we still get together. There's 8 of us that get together once a month. Right now, with everything that's going on, we haven't been getting together, but we get together, once a month, and pretty much it started doing more of the meats, and I would start doing the cooking. Even when we go to somebody else's house, oftentimes I would do the cooking on their grills. Just because, like you said, you get a bunch of together, and the problem you have when you're trying to cook, when there's a lot of people together, you forget what you're cooking. Well, like I said, I like food, so I always paid attention to what was going on the grill. So there'd be times where we'll be there and somebody else is cooking, and I'd be like, "Those are done. Let's get them off. Don't let them burn." Or
You're,
go to
s-
a pig.
you're sitting there like the background voice, like I guess the audience just sitting there like, those are burnt, man. Just take them off, man. The dude's not even paying attention. He's staring over at like a car driving by. You're like, bro, man, come on, dude. Look, step aside. Let me get into this.
Well, for sure, because like I said, I like my steak medium rare, and pretty much when steaks are on, it's like they're done. Let's get them off. So it's one of those things. I just started doing it, and then I'd start showing up, and they'd be like, "Okay, the grill's all set up. Just tell me what you want to do."
I'm literally probably the easiest person to cook for. I'm very, very simple. I don't care what you put on it. I don't really like I don't I'm literally just plain as it goes and I'll just add whatever I want on it. But like cooking a burger, like my dad's like, all right, Rob wants it burnt, so I'm just gonna leave his on longer than everybody else's or something. That's how it works. Like I'm that simple. You could literally completely leave it in there for like 4 hours till it comes out like a crumbled up piece of coal, and I'll still eat it. Like it's just you dump some ketchup on that shit. I'll do ketchup on my burgers, but I am not doing ketchup on my eggs.
I heard you with Harmon Heat. You had this question with Justin, and I do not put ketchup on my eggs at all either.
That's why I like you. You see how it works out? But I mean, see, I think the weirdest combination I've ever really done with food when it comes to like, especially if you want to talk about barbecuing is I made cheese dogs one time by like slicing open the hot dog and then putting cheese inside of it and then closing it back up and just like I felt like a fucking surgeon.
I do like trying different things when I do cooking. I'm not into sauces a lot. Like I don't put barbecue sauce, and people that watch our channel will notice that I often say it. I just like a dry rub, and usually a dry rub that doesn't have a whole lot of sugar in it. And I just, for whatever reason, I just don't. I don't. I like the flavor of barbecue sauce, but I don't like it taking over. Like I like tasting the meat. So a lot of times I don't even put a lot of, salt, pepper, garlic on a lot of things I do is all it's used. I prefer to do it with the smoke and with the grill and just have a good piece of meat that you're tasting the flavor of.
Do you prefer to keep the meat, let it speak for itself, or do you prefer to add spices and rubs to it? I know a lot of people in the barbecue industry add a lot of spices and rubs to it, but I'm like, sometimes, like, if you cook a nice, like, grilled up meat or you barbecue something correctly, it speaks for itself to where you don't need to add any spices to it.
Yeah, for the times I use the rubs are the most are usually like pulled pork, ribs, or brisket. And on those, it's kind of just getting that bark, and that gives you that nice flavor of the bark. But the meat itself, I often don't inject the meat I do. I mean, a lot of others do, and they say it keeps it moister and all those things. But I've had good results with that Comodo Joe. It really holds moisture. So I'm real happy just using it. Like a beef brisket, I'll use there's Cosmo is out there, and he's well known in the barbecue community with his rubs, along with like Malcolm Reed for Just losing the name of his channel, but everybody knows Malcolm Reed.
I get the rub factor, man. Like, I mean, if you crush up a bowl of Fritos and then roll the meat around in that afterwards or something, like you put a nice, like, thick kind of coat of like maybe a spice or like a glaze on top of it and then roll it around like Fritos, barbecue Fritos if you really don't want to barbecue, but still, like that's interesting to me. But what I hate is when someone puts so much spice or rub on it that like it's like when you reach in a bag of Doritos, you got half the shit on your fingers. It's like, what the hell? I don't want to pick up a piece of meat or I don't want to cut into a meat. Next thing I know, I look like I just snorted cocaine or something. Like when you eat a powdered donut and it's all over your face. If it's a rub that much, that's just, I lose the taste of it. I like tasting the authenticity in the meat, I would say, like that actual smoky flavor. Like, Jeff Levine, who does Silk City hot sauce, he sent me a bottle of his hot sauce. Shout out to Jeff. It's smoked, is what they called it. I tried it. It tastes just like you would be smoking something. Any type of meat you add to that or add that sauce to any type of meat, it would give that smoky flavor to it. And that's what a lot of people are going to be experiencing now because, they don't have the resources to go outside and be able to barbecue.
Yeah, and you're right. It can take over. Like I said, I don't use my rubs heavy. Sometimes though, you got a big piece of meat, you can add a little bit more up to it. Steaks, I typically only put salt on them, and then I'll add. So I'll on a typical steak, I'll put some salt on it. I call it dry brining. It's not technically the correct term, but that's what I call it. I'll dry brine. I'll put some kosher salt on a steak, both sides. Put it on a rack. It goes in the fridge, uncovered overnight for 24 hours, and it just absorbs that some of that flavor. And when you grill that thing, it gets this beautiful crust on it, and then just like I said, a little pepper and garlic. And I'm one of my things I like to do is steak is one of my favorite things to cook, and doing them indirectly and getting a good sear, so you get a crust and you still have that medium rare steak, and it's just such a enjoyable flavor to have. And like I said, I add nothing else to it besides some basic spices to it.
Okay, I have to ask, what's your favorite thing to cook, like meal wise for you? Maybe not. All right, that's two questions technically. What's your favorite thing to cook? And then what's your favorite thing that you enjoy? Because my favorite meal is not something I enjoy cooking because it takes too fucking long.
That's kind of a good question. It's probably a ribeye steak is my favorite thing to eat as far as cooking. My favorite thing to do is probably ribs for whatever reason. Um, I just, I always had a hard time. A couple of restaurants you go out and you find, oh, the ribs are great today. And next time you go there, they aren't. It's because they're doing mass production of these things. And, it's hard to do that, mass production part. For me, I'm babysitting that thing all day long or, for the hours it's cooking. So when they come off and you get that flavor and just to get to eat them, and I like a fall off the bone rib, which competitions out there I would not do well in because I like to cook the meals the way I like them, not concerned about how a judge is going to interpret them. So ribs is one of the things I just for whatever reason I enjoy doing. But steak is usually my go-to for everything. My wife doesn't necessarily like the smoky flavor, so I'll cook her steak and she likes filet mignon compared to a ribeye. So
You got a
I'll,
rich girl or something over there, man. As soon as you drop the word filet mignon, I immediately add another zero to that $10.
it's actually not bad when you buy a pack of steaks. It's not terrible price wise if you shop properly. But she likes the gas grill, so I'll make her steak on the gas grill, and I'll make mine on the charcoal grill. I have like 4 grills in the back porch, and hopefully going to add a flat top in the next couple months here. But no, I love steak, and I love cooking almost anything, and we'll try literally almost anything on the grills. The Comodo Joe, I have a rotisserie feature for that, so I've tried lamb, I've tried turkey, chicken. Did an entire fillet on the Komodo Joe on the rotisserie.
How
You
does
talk about it.
fish? How does fish work on a grill? I feel like that'd be pretty bad. I mean, unless you're like on using like a pan, kind of doing it that way. But if you're trying to grill or fry up a fish, it seems a lot pretty difficult.
And actually, so I have some cast iron grates, or like actually like almost like a cast iron pan because it's solid. It isn't like you can see through it in any way. I've done fish on the cast iron. I've done scallops on the cast iron, which turned out great. Um, I just cooked shrimp the other night on the grill. Put them on skewers so you can actually handle them a lot easier, and just grilled them over top of the fire, basically. Then I did a set of plain and a set with just a little blackened seasoning on it. But again, I don't want to overdo it.
I need to work on my grilling skills. I don't think I've actually really ever grilled besides using like a pan on top of a stove. I don't even call it grilling or using a George Foreman. I guess that's the farthest I've really went into it. But my worst experience, and I kind of want to ask yours too, is remember when I was like 14 years old, my dad said go start up the grill and like to turn the propane on. I've never done that before. And I remember I did it and I didn't do it correctly. And he came over like 10 minutes later and he went to light it. And before he lit it, he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he fixed something on the propane tank. He's like, you could have just blew us all up. As soon as I figured out those tanks can blow up, like when he goes to fill up a propane tank, no, 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 no. Robbie's waiting in the car, dude. I am not. I've seen Final Destination. I know how that shit ends.
Yeah, propane can be fun if you aren't careful, or if you get like it's a windy day and it blows it out. You know, you got to let that grill clear before you try to light it again. I always joke when we built, my wife and I built our, well, we didn't build it, but we had the house built that we're in now, and we have an in-ground propane tank, and that's our heat source. But I also had a line run so I could actually hook up my gas grill to the propane tank. So I always said, if I run out of propane when I'm cooking, I got bigger problems.
I'm thinking of Hank Hill right now. I'm like, he never taught anybody that propane explodes. I spent my whole life as a kid, well, not my whole life, but most of my childhood as a kid looking at Hank Hill and thinking that guy's a daredevil. He works around propane.
Well, it can be.
Now, what would you say is probably your worst experience though that you've ever really had with cooking, whether it was a meal that didn't turn out properly, not really the grill malfunctioning or being an idiot like me and trying to kill everybody at the family barbecue?
Um, I want to say fish is one of the hardest things for me. Like you brought it up before, and I've made it a few ways, which I really liked it. Trying fish different ways is probably just because I don't do it enough, I guess. We actually just picked up some halibut today. I made halibut only once before, just a week ago, and the way I made it, I didn't like it. So tonight I'm going to try it a different way. So we'll see what happens. But I'm going to try to just basically grill this on my Weber kettle with the charcoal, and I'm going to see how that works out compared to the way I tried it the other day, which I basically kind of steamed it on the grill, but it was just trying to get it done because I never cooked it before. So it's probably fish is one of the things. And even on our channel, we get questioned like, "Hey, do you ever cook fish more?" Jack is not a fish person, so we just haven't done a whole lot of it. I do want to do more of it though.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of like for me, besides maybe trying to blow everybody up at like a family barbecue, I've burned myself pretty bad with cooking where I've just like kind of stick to the basics of what I know. Like a microwave is not difficult to use. Um, Mostly when it comes to convenience with food, but also I have a crack in my microwave and I probably shouldn't keep using it because it gets hot. You can feel the heat from a microwave. I don't think that's supposed to happen.
Yeah, probably not your best thing to be standing there looking in, watching it, I guess, as well.
I like to talk to my on my cell phone right next to the microwave, like put my ear up to the microwave and the phone.
Yeah, that works, right?
I don't remember what happened 5 minutes ago, but I know that there's probably no correlation with any brain damage that goes with that.
Yeah, right.
Do you ever try and infuse alcohol with some of your barbecue creations?
I did. I actually did a made a chunk of prime rib, and then I shaved it thin, and then I made an au jus. Um, and instead of water for it, I used beer, and then I was kind of the au jus as far as like a French dip sandwich.
Oh,
So
French dip, throwing
yeah.
me back, dude. Holy crap. I haven't had French dip since I was like 13, 12
Oh,
years
really?
old, where you take the meat and you have it like on a sandwich and you dip it into that little whatever I don't even know what that dip is
It's
called.
basically beef broth. They call it au jus, but it's basically beef broth with usually I throw some garlic and maybe some seasonings in there and some pepper.
Why does
Um,
certain food link to certain class distinctions?
I honestly don't know because you get a beef roast and you now actual French dip is kind of like a beef roast. They shave thin and then you have the sauce to dip it in. I like to do like the next level with a prime rib, a little bit better cut of meat, shave it thin, and when you eat it, it's just so tender. And like I said, I actually dip the meat in the au jus itself to make the sandwich. Then I almost don't need any sauce to dip it in. But yeah, it's basically beef broth. I don't know why it's kind of perceived as higher end.
I don't know. Every time I think of French dip, I'm like, oh, you fancy. Like you got like money and stuff, like you got marble tables and everything. And then like I just look at all the foods. Like if you would have looked at my diet of what I eat, like cans of tuna and stuff, you'd be like, this guy is waiting for an apocalypse to happen. That's like salads, this types of like it's healthy eating, but that's how it looks at. And then you look at people that go like, I'm not a big spender. I'd rather spend $1 on a can of tuna than go out and even if it's on date night and do like $60 on a steak. There's a steakhouse called Ruth's Chris near me. It's like
Okay.
my buddies go there and like they spend probably over like $200 a person on themselves just getting a steak and like a side meal. They sent me a picture of their steak, most like everybody else our age that just takes pictures of their food before they send it. He sends me a picture of it and I'm like, "That's what you got for 200 something dollars?" He goes, "Yeah, doesn't it look good?" I'm like, "No, because it's the size of like half my pinky and it's on a plate and it just looks like it's plated in a perfect way to look fancy." I'm like, "What where are you guys going after this? You taking a helicopter ride somewhere?" Like that to me is just fancy and kind of useless.
Yeah, honestly, I don't order steak when I go out. We have a steakhouse near us. I've been to Riz Chris before, and steaks are good, and it's a good cut of meat and all those things. But like you said, the price tag is kind of like that's way up there. And for one quarter of that price, I can probably cook pretty similar. May
You
not
buy
be
a
exactly the
fucking
same.
cow for that price. You could
Yeah,
legit buy a cow, pay a butcher to kill it, and then take all the meat home, and you would have way more better of a time. I knew people that spend $200 to $400 on a dinner, and I look at that like, yo, that's groceries for like a month.
that's true. That's very true. You can spend a lot of money on a lot on steaks, and then you go to a steakhouse, and wagyu is the big thing. You see everything out there right now,
What
and
the
we're
hell is wagyu?
so if you're I don't know if you're familiar with cuts of beef, but you have like there's choice and there's prime, and then there's wagyu, and then there's Kobe, and those type things. But what it is basically the marbling of the meat itself. So if you're ever in a grocery store and you see something and they might have select, which is a lower level yet, you'll see like let's just say a ribeye, it'll look like the meat's just all red and you don't see no intermuscular fat there. That intermuscular fat is flavor and tenderness. So every level is more of that intermuscular fat in the steak itself. So if you want to get like for me a ribeye, I'll often just buy choice because there's enough fat in a ribeye itself for it. But for a fillet, I might buy the prime because it's just more tender and a little bit more flavorful. Without the fat, it actually can dry up some as well.
And this all depends on these are all factors that play into the way you barbecue.
In a sense, yeah, because I mean, if it's when you have a brisket, there's prime and there's choice. Prime definitely cooks easier for me anyway, and it's more moist and more tender and all those things. For choice, I may do something a little bit different with when I wrap it. I often wrap my briskets because of holding the moisture in and not getting my bark too thick and too hard. So I'll wrap it and I'll add some beef broth to that when I wrap it. But it's about keeping it more moist and trying to kind of maintain what that cut of meat is.
Have you ever tried barbecuing or grilling up an apple?
My wife and I actually tried almost every fruit there is out there. Apples are fantastic when you grill them. Peaches are another one that are good, and pears are another one. We
Pineapple
tried
too.
pineapple is fantastic. We tried plums. That was horrible. It got bitter.
Plums aren't even
Um,
good by itself.
Actually, a good plum. I like a good plum, but it's hard to find a good plum because
That's
they pick them early, and then they until they ripen, they almost spoil. And if you try it too soon, they're too bitter.
See, I
So
always
it's
look at
rare.
you want to talk about classifications of food. When someone says plum, I think of a depressed fruit. Like not killing itself, but on like the edge where you're like, don't jump. And he's like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, plums are like you said that way, but they're hard to find when they're real good. Um,
But that's something though. Like imagine incorporating fruit juices onto your food. Like when I grilled up a fish one time or, put it in a pan, I put pineapple in there and then I added that and then I added maybe a little bit of roasted peppers to it, dude. You get a whole new flavor profile, man. I love unlocking that type of stuff where you feel like you just hack basically your meal.
Oh yeah, pineapple. A lot of people use pineapple for tenderizer, so they'll put it on pineapple juice or even like grind up the pineapple itself and coat a steak with it for an hour or two. It actually tenderizes the steak. We did a, in fact, the video is out there, a rack of pork, which is basically an eight bone rack with pork, and we make our own applesauce here. So every year, the group of us, the eight of us, that the MQ group gets together and we do applesauce, and we do like 100 pints of applesauce or 200 pints of applesauce we did last year. But all the leftover juice, I often save that. So I added some salt to that and made like a wet brine and dumped it on the rack of pork overnight and just let that absorb and that apple juice get into the meat and then grilled the rack of pork that way. You talk about nice and tender.
You talk about nice, and that should be your motto. Talk about nice and tender.
And maybe we'll have to throw that in there on the end of our cooks. Talk about nice and tender.
Yeah, when you do your videos and stuff too, like what do you typically find the most fascinating part? I mean, are involved in the cooking process, but how do you make yours unique? Like, how do you make it so interesting to you to make it interesting to the audience? Because I mean, if anybody could really look up a barbecue video and get something out of it, but how do you set yourself from the rest?
You know what? We really don't seek out to do something like majorly different. We try to keep things, our videos, and I don't know if you got a chance to see any of them, but our videos are usually relatively short. We try to stay between 6 and 12 minutes, just because even when I watch a video, and I watch longer ones, but I'll often fast forward through some parts if it's a real long video and it's just me looking at a piece of meat on the grill for 3 minutes. We try to just only incorporate what's important to the cook on the. So we always show how it starts. We show the cooking. We show the tasting at the end. I always do like an overview of everything I did, and then we create an outline that we put into the comments, so it says exactly how we cooked it, and often the temperatures and times, because people started asking, like, well, how long did you do this part? How long did you do that part? Well, wasn't paying attention. I would often say, well, that was 2 beers, so I'm not sure how long that was. But honestly, it was like they're looking for instruction, and not that I'm in no way professional in any way of that. I just like good food, and I like perfecting the things I'm cooking. So you take your time. Different temperature probes anymore linked to your phone. They all track the whole cook, so I can actually look back at the phone and get everything that happened. It took this long. It took an hour to do this part and 10 minutes to do that part, and that helps people out. So we try to do that. We always have beer. Notice the name. So we always have a beer in the beginning, and we do a toast at the end. Is something that's a little bit different, but nothing too unique. Just trying to be real and just try to show we're doing.
I think you should show towards the ending too of you guys enjoying the food as well.
Well, I always take. Well, in the beginning, I didn't taste it, and then one of a bigger YouTuber said, "Taste the meat; it makes a difference." So we started tasting it at the end. Now, just myself. Jack's not one to get on camera, but he does a heck of a job with the editing. We have multiple cameras set up now, and he has all the mic equipment and lighting. It kind of looks, almost professional out there that we're doing this.
Well, it's like the same thing if you watch a professional cooking show. The one thing that really pissed me off was the questions I had. Like she was like, "Then you're gonna put in the oven for 450 for 2 or like 20 minutes or something." And next thing you know, she turns around, grabs something, and it should look like this. I'm like, "How the hell did you do that? Where's the 20 minutes of waiting? I'm doing the same thing you're doing. You have your stuff done, so now I gotta pause it." And this is before the era of TiVo, so you just had to wait, figured out the rest whenever you were done.
Yeah, that's true. But like I said, we try not to show stuff that's going to lose people's attention. And I know in the world of like we can actually, for YouTube, you can actually make a little bit of money off it. We've made tiny bits of money off it, and we aren't doing it for that reason at all. But it's kind of one of those things where they say longer videos make more money. Well, that's okay, but that's not what we do. We try to show the important parts of the cooking part.
The
We show every
teaching
time we.
methods. Anybody can just slice and dice up something real quick and show you, this is how I did it. And there's going to be people listening like, well, now I got questions. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Can you take me through your steps and your processes so I know how to do it myself?
And we try to I usually answer all the questions or all the comments, and people ask questions and I give them an honest answer, or if I don't know, I'll tell them, or I'll tell them I'll find something out and get back to them, and I try to follow up that way. Having the full-time job and then doing the video thing is part of it. But one thing we do is we only do a video every 2 weeks. Jack and I shoot videos in advance. Like the one that's coming out this week is a pork loin that I did sous vide. And I don't know if you're familiar with sous vide cooking or not. But basically, it's a water bath in a sense. And you vacuum seal the meat, put it in a water bath at a certain temperature for a certain number of hours. And then I usually grill it at the end just for searing it. Um, but people will ask all those questions, so we try to make sure we're answering everything of what they're looking for.
Yeah. Now, if I had to ask you, what's your creative idea of anything that you're going to be doing in the future when it comes to your creations? We've heard of turducken before, a turkey with like a duck inside of it or something. Come on, you got to have something crazy coming down the pike. If the guy that's serving me my sushi at a Japanese steakhouse or something and he makes a fire volcano, you're telling me Craig Beers doesn't have anything that he's going to be doing, or maybe some daredevilish type stuff?
Trying to think, because one of the things the show that was interesting, and it didn't get a whole lot of traction, which surprised me, was lobster mac and cheese that I made on the Comodo Joe. And
Lobster
I thought
mac and cheese.
lobster mac and cheese. So I make that every year for Christmas. I always made it in the oven, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna do a video. I'm gonna make half a batch in the oven and half a batch on the Comodo Joe, and just to see how it gets, because the Komodo Joe is basically an outdoor oven in a sense. Um, Turned out well. It was a little smoky for me, but I was glad to do it. I'm trying to think, there was something else. We talk about, my grandmother made a called a ham loaf. So it's like a piece of ham and a piece of pork, and you grind it up together and put some other mixtures in there and do like, I'm going to call it grandma's ham loaf when I do it sometime. Nothing totally unique though, because again, I like more of the basics. I make my own bacon. I've been doing that. We have a video up of making bacon there. I watched a bunch of other videos, got ideas, came up with my own kind of recipe and what I wanted to do, and started making bacon. And just smoked some more bacon this weekend that my wife and I'll be slicing up tonight.
Okay, now what's your least favorite food? Because you said mac and cheese, and I was never a big mac and cheese guy, mostly because the consistency. I fucking hate mayo because of the taste of mayo. The consistency of it, it's just too much like a something, that somebody of the male genre can produce from themselves.
So yeah, our mac and cheese is basically white American cheese and mustard. So it's very basic. But I grew up eating white American cheese, and my wife grew up with her family. So I took my mom's recipe and my mother-in-law's recipe and kind of combined the two and kind of made what we like. And it's very basic. And the comments we've gotten, like, you need 5 cheeses to make mac and cheese. Well, I grew up using one, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's too much cheese for mac and cheese, man. You don't want it to be I mean, I get it. Like, when it comes to like the stickiness factor of the cheese, I like a nice pull apart cheese, like with pizza, when you open up a slice of pizza and you like break it off from another slice, you get that cheese kind of hang to it. That's just salivating in general. But when you add too much cheese to the mac and cheese, it's like, it's like
Yeah,
it's hard to close my mouth. It's like you're eating peanut butter.
yeah, for sure. But believe it or not, one of the things, my least favorite thing is probably turkey. Although I like to grill a turkey and smoke a turkey and have people, they always say, "Oh, this is fantastic." I always think it, even when they say, "Oh, this is so moist." I'm like, "This is dry." I don't know why. I just never. Well, again, we didn't grow up eating turkey, so I'm just not a huge turkey fan. But I've definitely smoked a few and don't mind doing them. It's fun doing the challenge and watching it and doing all those things. But I'm not a big fan of turkey.
It's just I feel the same way. I mean, I like the sliced turkey you can get like a store, like with water added or something, just because it
Right.
keeps it nice and moist. But every time you get a turkey on Thanksgiving or something, the reason why it's dry, if you look, the fucking inside of the turkey is like bone dry, like an apocalyptic wasteland or something. I mean, dust literally comes out when you open up the turkey. Like, you get the nice, I guess, but it's just like you cut out the outside, and no matter if it's dark meat or light meat, it's just you end up chewing on it for a minute and it sucks up all the moisture out of your mouth. You're like, water, water.
Yeah, honestly, I don't. Well, I'm not, like I said, I don't like using sauces. I don't like using gravies either. But Thanksgiving, I will have gravy on my plate because I'm eating turkey at that point. I mean, same with chicken breast. Like, I'm not a big chicken breast fan. I like doing chicken thighs or chicken wings, but I'm not a big chicken breast fan. So there's a scenario too where my wife loves chicken breast, so I make those for her, and on the gas grill typically, and I'll make chicken thighs on the Weber charcoal grill.
Have you reached out to any spice companies or hot sauce companies to see if they'll send you some of their product to use in your videos?
I haven't done that yet. That is kind of on my mind to do that. My goal was for somebody to send me a grill. Is what kind of the joke when we started this channel was my only goal is that somebody sends us a grill. I did have one company reach out to us, and then they disappeared. I don't know if they reached out to a couple companies, and we were smaller of a channel. We did have, like I said, we talked about this turkey, and turkey, you want to make sure you hit the perfect temperature and do all those things. Well, there's a company called Cook Perfect, and I'm not trying to give them a plug here, but they have a temperature probe, and I use temperature probes in pretty much everything I cook, just because it's really the right way to do it. And as being a non-professional, I can touch it, and this is done this way. I like to do everything by temperature. This temperature probe has like 5 different settings, and it uses like an algorithm to tell you where the perfect center is. And it kind of takes some of the guesswork out of it. But when you're doing a turkey, that's important that you get that temperature right. And like I said, this company, I reached out to them and they sent me a free probe, and then they actually sent me one to give away on the channel. So that was pretty cool.
I need to get my tinfoil hat on. We're talking about probes so much. Does that technically aliens probe us and then we probe turkey? So are we aliens? So is that me studying UFOs if I'm probing a turkey?
Probably when you're probing a turkey or a piece of meat, I guess you could be considered that,
Oh, that's going to change up the way I'm going to be grilling.
huh? It honestly, I have friends that, oh, I never used temperature probes, and now that's all they do. And that's the way they cook now. And it just takes some of the guesswork out of it, and it makes sure everything's done right.
Well, I can send you a grill. I got a George Foreman grill I picked up from a thrift shop. The original owner was Frederick Douglass in 1812. Um, I can send you that one that I do use. You have to clean it off a little bit though, but you can taste the history. I taste some burnt skin flesh on that sucker. But I know plenty of people. I've talked to plenty of people that are in hot sauce companies, that are in certain spices and rub companies, and different types of barbecuers as well. I'll be more than happy to connect them to you. I'm pretty sure they would love it if you tried some of their sauce on some of your meats and let them know how it is. They're all very nice people. It's the same thing. The barbecue community, hot sauce community, they're positive communities. They're very, very beneficial for each other. They give each other advice. Nobody's ever really decriminalizing or kind of putting anybody down in a way. You'll get your obviously one or two people that have an overinflated ego, but still at the same time, it's mostly beneficial.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, the barbecue community, you can ask any question out there to almost any YouTuber. And even guys, like I said, T Roy was the first person I follow. And I follow a bunch of others that are, big name ones. But one of the things that was so cool about T Roy, I asked him a question, as a brand new griller and just trying to learn something. And he answered it, or he did I did a tomahawk steak one time, and he made a comment. He goes, "Oh, I thought you were going to go caveman on it." So we did another tomahawk on a different grill, and I actually owned a T-Roy shirt because, like I said, he was the first channel I really watched. So I got a shirt and did a tomahawk, and I did a caveman, which all it means is pick it up by the bone and take a big bite out of it with my T-Roy shirt in. And I shot him an email saying, "Hey, T-Roy, did a little video and get called you out." Well, of course, he watched it and then commented on it. So, the guy has almost 300,000 subscribers, and at the time we had maybe 200, and he still made a comment on our video and watched it. So it's pretty cool that way. But yeah, you get any help you want.
I come across people that have millions of followers and they're more than happy to be a part of something, no matter how big or how small it is. And then I've come across people that have like 100 followers, and some dude I reached out to be on the podcast shot me an answer like, "Nah, bro, I own a $500 billion company and I don't really have time to do a podcast. Sorry, good luck with it though." And I'm just like looking at him, I'm like, "You have 100 followers and you're wearing a shirt that says Super Mario on it. Like, if I had $500 million, I wouldn't be like that. I'd be most of it probably get donated."
Yeah, you know what? You can only have so much, and when you're happy, you're happy. It doesn't matter kind of how you got there as long as you're happy.
And for all you people out there that think I'm being, modest and saying I donated to a charity, no, I donated to make a giant statue of Diggum on my front lawn. So technically, that's a selfish donation, but I like Diggum, so we're gonna go that route. Well, look, Craig, I really appreciate you coming out and doing the podcast, man. It was amazing talking to you. I want to give you here a minute at the end to be able to plug your channel, plug your Instagram, plug anything, your Facebook page, so people can find your awesome content, and also maybe ask you a couple questions when it comes to barbecue.
Okay, that'd be great. So yeah, our channel's called Beers, Jack and Barbecue. Same name for Instagram. On Facebook, it's called Beers, Jack, and then it's a space because of the way they had it there of barbecue. Actually, just started Facebook like 2 weeks ago. So, like I said, we aren't trying to like go crazy with it. Just trying to have a good time with it. But some of the benefits that are coming from it are kind of cool. So that's kind of a nice thing.
You literally got one friend on Facebook that's a mutual friend of mine, and that is my boy Harmon Heat, Justin Harmon. Shout out to him. And I just sent you a friend request. So now if you deny it, it's on recording so people know. This is how I get friends, people. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.